Welkom bij Gitaarmannen, de podcast. Vandaag een legendarische blues-gitarist. Geboren getogen in Engeland, nu al jaren woonachtig in Florida. Hij komt binnenkort naar Nederland voor een tour. Onder andere P60 in Amstelveen, Tivoli, de Spot in Groningen, Heerlen. Dus hij bestrijkt echt heel Nederland. Maar we gaan het hebben over zijn invloeden, maar niet te lang. Niet te lang, nee, want ik wil het hebben over zijn nieuwe plaat. Ik wil het hebben over zijn manier van spelen. Over alles wat hem bezighoudt, de gitaar aangaande. Ladies and gentlemen, Matt Schofield. Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Ed. Happy to be here. Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, you're from Florida.
These days, yes.
These days.
I'm in sunny, as you can see, with the light streaming in, even with the blinds closed. It's very warm and sunny, about 25 degrees in Celsius money. So we're enjoying our delightful winter that we get here.
That's so nice.
That's why I got dressed up for you.
5 degrees Celsius here, so it's freezing.
Yeah. So we make the most of that, despite the craziness that's going on in America. You know, we will get into that.
Yeah, how's that? How's
crazy.
that for a musician?
Yeah, it's always been odd here. I have a visa. I'm not a green card holder yet, so there's always something to be dealing with that, and we shall see how things go in the coming years. With a lot of talk about different things about visas and stuff. But I've been in Florida 10 years now, so not really by design. Just ended up here, and it's a nice place to come back from tour to. And been out on the road, so that's more what happened.
How does one end up in Florida?
Long story. I've been on the road for 1997. I did my first international tour date, so I guess that's the official beginning of my touring life. And then I was increasingly touring in the US. In a past life, I spent a lot of time up in Canada in a previous relationship until 10 years ago. And then I was working out with the rhythm section out of Miami. Still do, guys that still play with me on and off a lot. And so it was winter. It was December 2014, and had a change of personal situation. And I thought, well, to hell with it. I'm going to Florida for the winter, because the weather's great in December. I'd never been anywhere warm, and I guess I'm still here, So and then managed to. I was lucky enough to be able to buy this little apartment, and which was a great opportunity at the time because everything's got very expensive now. So it was affordable for a touring blues musician back then. I was 40 at the time, and I was like, I guess I should have somewhere to live after years on the road, And my partner, Christine, is a New Yorker, so we're from the Bronx. Some people who are familiar with me may have seen her singing with us. She comes out and does a few tunes with us, wonderful vocalist. So for a while, we were back and forth between New York and here. She had a place up there, and then, during the whole COVID shutdown of the world, she ended up making the leap down here. So we're still here, but we pretty much talk about every day about where we might live in the future, depending on the way things go. I've nearly moved to the Netherlands probably half a dozen times in the last 25 years, actually. So that's always been on the cards because it's always been a place that I've probably played there more than anywhere else other than the US, actually, in terms of number of gigs. So
serious, yeah. I just announced in my Gitaarmannen WhatsApp community that I would have you on the podcast, and people are like, "Whoa, Matt Schofield, whoa!" So you have a really good fan base over here.
Yeah, they've always been really receptive to the music, So I do a couple of tours a year there, which, given the size of the geographical size of the country, it's amazing. I couldn't do that many gigs in the UK in a million years. There's just not enough places and people that are into it to support that. So it's always been amazing to me. But yeah, I've been coming. I think I did my first tour in the Netherlands in 2001 with a great harmonica player from London called Lee Sankey, who was my first sort of one of my first touring gigs. and been coming pretty much every year since then with someone or other until, I started my own band in maybe 2005. We probably did our own first tour date there. So 20 years of that, man,
Wow.
Getting old.
Let's see, because I have the tour schedule up here on the screen. 20th of March, the P60 in Amstelveen.
Probably my 20th time playing there in 20 years as well.
21st of March in Tivoli, Utrecht.
Wonderful venue. We did that last year. That's a great room. Yeah.
It has. Do you play in? Do you know in which room you play in? The Hertz,
big,
maybe?
nice one. That sounds amazing. Yeah, the big curved theatre with the wooden. Yeah, we did that last year for the first time, and it's a wonderful place to play and see music from both sides of the people, us and the audience. Yeah.
And then the 22nd, you will be playing down south in Holland.
Yes.
If you can speak of south in such a small post stamp of a country. In Heerlen, the Blues Night.
Yeah, Heerlen Blues Night. Yeah, I think we maybe did that in the past as well, but that'll be fun. I'm sure there's some other great bands on there as well. So. Is that
an outside gig, or is that somewhere?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's probably a bunch of bands playing around some kind of complex, if I recall correctly.
And then the 24th of March, you'll be playing in the Spot in Groningen.
Back up north. Yeah.
Back up north. So you have all the bases covered.
That's right. We're trying to hit all the spots, So maybe we're just missing something over by Enschede, or I'm not saying that right, but
you're pronouncing
many friends. I got so many Dutch friends, and so I kind of know all the spots these days.
Yeah. All the nice places. But also in the Netherlands, it's pretty expensive at the moment. So I'm not sure if moving to the Netherlands will cut the costs or something.
Yeah, I know. It's expensive everywhere, man. It's expensive. Yeah. It's expensive here in Florida, and one of the reasons it was cheap when I first came down there. I was like, wow, you can have this quality of life with I'm near the ocean, and the weather, and great restaurants, and and it was almost like feeling like you were. When I got back from being on the road, you had a little vacation or something, but everywhere's expensive now. So,
and for instance, can you say a leaf of bread was 10 years ago this amount of dollars, and now is really expensive?
Yeah, definitely. And just property, I wouldn't be able to afford this little apartment now in a million years, So especially since COVID in Florida, everybody flooded down to Florida from other states to kind of Florida had less restrictions on things, so everybody thought I'm going there, and
the promised land.
Yeah, but it's changed it. We don't need to get too much into that, but the vibe is different, and it's I live in Jupiter, which was very small and no traffic, and it was really nice, but mellow, and it's got much busier, So and what happens is over the years, the population has kind of grown up from Miami through Fort Lauderdale and then up through Boca Raton, and now it's it's all joined up all the way up here. So I was the end of the line of South Florida when I was first here, but now it's passing us. So big population increase, and but. So
how is it being a musician? Because you're coming up with a new album.
Yeah.
How does that process go at this point in time? Because I saw your last album was from 2014.
Yeah.
If I'm
correct.
Well,
I mean, that's part. There's not a simple explanation for that. There's a lot of factors. Some of it just me. I guess I for whatever reason, it wasn't what I've wanted to do for the last decade, because I basically, I did an album and then a live album and then an album. So for the first 10 years of my solo career, it was like hamster wheel, go. And, I mean, the financial element does come into that for sure, in that it basically just cost me a lot of money to do that, which is fine because I was 25 when my first thing came out, and you're looking ahead, aren't you? You're investing in your career. But then it gets to a certain point where you have to make different choices about things, and So first of all, when I got this place to own a home, I was 40 years old, and that became something important after being so transient for years, And so then I've spent a lot of time in the last sort of 6 years doing the TrueFire courses that I do, the educational, instructional stuff. TrueFire have been amazing. That's really changed my... that was giving me a chance to look at things differently in terms of touring and recording. And so because I get paid for that, and you don't make any money on records anymore at all. So
no.
Making
records nowadays is a labor of love.
It's a labor of love, and it's a huge, it's like tens of thousands of dollars to get it out there. And I think people forget that I also, I have bills to pay like everybody else. I have to earn a living. And so, anyway, it's very complicated, the reason. But just to say, I don't own the rights to any of my previous albums apart from 2. So I have 9 studio and live albums. I only actually own the rights to 2 that I can choose what to do with or repress or sell at the gigs. So there's 1 live album, 1 on my last studio. Well, actually, I was lucky to get the rights to that back. So then I just sort of didn't want to be in that situation again where you pour your heart and soul into birthing this thing from you, which is your music, and then not be mine, So
only get like 20% if you're lucky.
If you're lucky, yeah. And but also just from like a creative perspective as well, So there's that. Then there's the fact that I don't just want to like put out an album just for the sake of it. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do for a while. Then we actually started this one, believe it or not, 2018. I got back together with Johnny Henderson and Evan Jenkins. So the record is my original trio from 20 years ago. Well, actually 22 years ago we recorded the first live album, but we've always toured the whole time. When I'm back in Europe, they don't come to the US because of visas and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But other than that, they've been to Japan with me, Australia with me. That's always been my core band, and we have a certain way of playing together that I haven't found with anybody else. I play with lots of great musicians over here as well. It's not a reflection on anyone else, but when you get that certain combination of people,
it just works.
Yeah, and I think my long-time fans or followers will, perhaps be familiar with the chemistry of that band. A lot of people have always said, "Oh, it's the trio. The trio's the band with Johnny on organ and Evan on drums." So we actually got together in the studio in 2018 to start with, and we recorded like 10, 11 tunes. I came home and I listened to it, and I was like, "It's okay, but I feel like there could be more. This could be captured better, or like there's some of the songs almost felt like, okay, these are demos of songs that could go further." And I'd never had a chance to do that before. It was always just get in the studio, make the record. Oh shit, that's it, it's done. Like even if I don't like it, I've spent the money and now it's got to put it out, So because I was doing it myself, I was in the position to procrastinate a bit, actually, which, the perfection is the enemy of progress, but sometimes you just want it to be how you want it to be,
Yeah.
So I kind of lived with that and worked on it and sang all the tunes on that recording, and then went, no, I think I need this to be something to have a different vibe. And then COVID happened. So, 18 months after we'd started that, and then I didn't see Johnny and Evan for 2 years because I was stuck here,
Yeah.
And we're not the kind of band to do something remotely like a lot of people did. We have to get in a room and play, even if then we go home and fiddle around with something. The core, we have to play all at the same time. And you'll hear on the new record, there's lots of interaction between us because everybody's playing with each other. So, there's many reasons that it took so long. And like I say, also, I've just paid for it myself. For the most part, I did have a contribution from a long-standing fan and friend who wanted to help out the process. And then for the last few months, we've been investigating labels and things like that. And I just have not found a compelling reason to go with one of them. Just like you're saying, it's so now the whole thing's been a learning curve as well, because it's like I'm a guitar player. I'm not a record label. I'm not a music industry expert publishing, and I have a couple of close friends that help with that and advise me with that know things more about that. But you have to learn to do all those things these days. Even like
these days,
right now. Until COVID, I didn't have a home studio. Making a record was going to a studio for me. So this whole setup that I'm sat in front of now, my little home studio, and live streaming and all of that stuff, that was like a baptism of fire in 2020. I had to learn to do that. I mean, I'm largely an analog kind of guy, tube amps and vinyl records, and so you have to have a lot of what do they say, strings to your bow these days as well. As
exactly. Social media, we haven't even talked about.
I hate that too, but I have to do it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have any of it if it wasn't for having to promote myself. I don't relate to it really. So
no, it's a necessity nowadays. To have a strategy.
And I've heard some other artists talk about this and how for some of us, the idea of having to constantly promote yourself and tell people yourself how brilliant you are is extremely distasteful.
It is.
That's not me. I prefer to let the music and the playing speak for itself. But you have to do that, and it creates this kind of push-pull within you of this, I gotta say, look, check me out.
Yeah.
Rather than in the old days, somebody else would be doing that for you via some kind of marketing campaign, and you just played the music, Yeah. So there is a lot of us, I think, that struggle with that idea of self-promoting is rather...
that's a good point.
Yes.
That's a good point. And I think not much artists really like to talk about that struggle.
No.
But it is. The struggle is real. If you're not Beyonce, if you're not playing on the Grammys, it's grinding.
It is, and it takes away a lot of the time from just being able to be creative. Listen, I don't want to sound like I'm complaining. I'm so grateful to be able to do what I do, and I've managed to get away with it for all these years, But I think there's a lot of layers to it that aren't really considered or noticed, and man, I get up most days and sit at this computer and I book flights and hotel rooms and figure out how I'm going to get a bunch of people to another country at roughly the same time. I do all that myself for like 90% of my shows, and which is fine, but that's sort of what I do all day is logistics and if you need a travel agent, I'm your guy.
All the cheap flights.
Everything, hotels and vehicles and just coordinating the whole thing.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to it to be an independent artist these days. A lot more than just being good at playing. That you have to learn to do well.
I think I'm 45. I think we were lucky that in our 20s we still, and in maybe like the years before that even, we had the time to play.
Yeah, definitely.
To sculpture the craft.
Yeah, I'm grateful for the period I grew up in. Actually, before the great technological shift, where I often say, in fact, to talk a bit more about music and playing, I've come to realize, like, I really learned to play in a room with other guys. That's where I learned to play, because from the moment I picked up a guitar, I started a band, basically.
Yeah.
So I decided I want to play, and I went to school that September for the new term, and said, I'm starting a band. Excuse me, I'm a bit under the weather at the moment.
Yeah.
starting a band, and my friend Chris went, okay, I'll play bass, and my friend Braz went, all right, I'll play drums, and then that's what we did every night that we could, and all day, both days at the weekend. From then on, that's how I learned. It wasn't. I mean, and of course, I was playing in my bedroom as a kid, but really, the impetus was to play music together with other human beings, and I came to realize that as the years went on. It's like, I think it's different now for people. There's a lot, you can get YouTube lessons, and there's so much information. And we didn't we just had the records, and we just wanted to play like that. And it was very pure in that regard. And when you're young enough, you don't think you can't, you've not reached that sort of self-doubt or something. So it was like, we were just having fun playing stuff we like. And
imagine now being like 15 or 14 years old and opening Instagram and seeing all those amazing people playing guitar like, like the best probably you can ever imagine. And they're your age.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it
and
must be
swiping up and seeing even
daunting.
more. It's like,
I will tell you that, I will say to people, don't believe everything you see. Not that there's not great players, of course there is, and there's amazing technicians, but being able to be impressive for 1 minute is a very different thing. I mean, that's why I don't relate to it. It's almost like a completely different skill to do 1 minute of something impressive, or to be able to keep an audience enthralled for 2 hours and make a record that they want to listen to again and again. To me, they're just totally different things. It may as well be like a different art altogether, So I hope people remember that, and that, well, and it's all diverged because, see, I picked up the guitar to play music, not to play guitar. Of course I love the guitar, but I wanted to use it to play music. And so now there's a lot of like playing guitar for guitar's sake, and that's fine if that's what you're into. None of this is criticism. It's just observation of, I think, like you say, coming from basically the first half of my life was one world, and the second half's been another, of totally different ways of interacting with the world. And I'm glad I got that first half the way it was. So it was just about playing the music we love, really simple like that.
And how did you first find the music, or how did the music find you?
Just my dad's records, He had vinyl, great blues vinyl records, and he actually used to listen to reel to reel. He had tapes, So I always knew who Muddy Waters was and B.B. King, and he was listening to all that stuff. And then a little bit of the contemporary guys at the time. So we're talking, I was born in 1977. So then through the 1980s, hearing that, even the Compromise in the car with my mum at that point, when my parents were together, was like Eric Clapton, because that was, she liked that stuff. She wasn't into the more hardcore blues, but she, so that was the kind of the Compromise. And so I just, it just was the sound. And funny, I realized maybe some people over there will remember him, Shakin' Stevens.
Shakin' Stevens,
well, when I was really young, before I'd started playing or anything, that was the guy I liked when I was like 6 years old, right? But when I think about it, it's all like shuffles and swings and old rock and roll, and it's really kind of the same as blues. So even that was leading me towards a certain kind of feel of music, old school rock and roll, swinging, So Shaky was my 6-year-old self's favorite.
And what was the moment you thought like, okay, I'm going to be a blues musician?
So my dad had moved to California, and he left me some VHS videos, and one of them was about 3 songs that he taped off the TV on our first big giant VCR, with the top loader.
Oh yeah,
and with a wired remote, But it was B.B. King, and it was like 3 songs recorded Newcastle Town Hall. You can go on YouTube and see all this stuff these days. But this was like gold to have this on video. And I just used to watch that every morning before school, just completely like in awe. Every morning, you know, play those same 3 songs on this video, watch BB. And I was like, how can I do this? You know, and like watching, I didn't understand anything. And I had got like a nylon string 3/4 size, like student classical guitar by that point. Because, you know, it was just a general interest in that kind of stuff. So I'm like, how do I be B.B. King? And then he had a bass player. He's still out there touring, this guy, Russell Jackson. Great bass player. And he was doing like slap stuff. Maybe like the first guy to do slap stuff in blues, you know?
Yeah.
But I was like, okay, well, maybe I could be his B.B. King's bass player if I practice. So I thought about that for a while. I actually got a cheap bass, but I still wanted to be B.B. King, dead. So it just went from there. And then in the summer of 1990, I used to go to California every summer as a kid to see my dad. And he had it was, you know, amazing to be able to see like VH1 and MTV out there. We didn't get that in the UK, and it's just music all the time, 24 hours. That was, you know, we didn't have that. We had 4 channels in the UK back then. That was it. And got a video of BB sitting in with Stevie Ray Vaughan and Albert Collins at New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival. You can go on, see that on YouTube, and they all play
nowadays. It's all there.
It's all there, but I had that on VHS, and he had that on VHS, and I actually taped the audio off it onto cassette. You know, so I was putting all his vinyl records onto cassette and then bringing them back to England, and all year just learning from that as best I could. But it was when I saw the 3 of them, BB, Stevie, and Albert, playing Texas Flood together. You can find it on YouTube now. I was like, that's it. I want to be up there with them. And it was more about like the way it looked like so much fun. It just looked like the coolest thing to do. And what struck me was that you couldn't find 3 more different sounds. And it dawned on me years later that they're not even tuned the same. So Stevie's in E flat, BB's in standard, Albert Collins is in F minor. So they talk about distinctive voices, and you've got a 355, a Strat, and a Telly. And it was just like, there seemed to be, look at the individuals there, look at the voices, look at it was like, there's something that I could be there, you know? I don't know why 12, turning 13-year-old me thought that, but I did. And so and then Stevie died that same summer, you know? Like, I'd literally just been watching this video over and over again and taping his records. My dad had like a couple of his albums on CD, because that was about as far modern as my dad got with his music. So it was all old blues stuff, and then he had like a couple of Stevie records and a couple of Robert Cray records, something like that, you know? So I was taping all of it, went home, started a band. So that was it. And from then on, and I was also getting a lot of Eric Clapton, because it was that. Still my favorite Eric Clapton period is like the Journeyman record and 24 Nights Live at the Albert Hall, which I just got last year. They did the expanded box set of Clapton at the. So that's my Eric, you know. And then,
everyone has his own Eric.
Yes, that's my Eric. Yeah. And I was also, so the BBC would stream those blues nights and all the Albert Hall gigs live. So I had my little Philips boombox, you know, Philips roller. Yeah. And again, I was taping the radio, and I was in bed with my headphones on. I should have been sleeping for school the next day, but they were broadcasting the blues nights from the Albert Hall. That would have been like beginning of 91. So they had, it was, you know, Eric, Buddy Guy, Robert Cray, Albert Collins was on that one, and Jimmy Vaughan, and so I'm like in bed, supposed to be sleeping with my headphones, listening to that, recording it off the radio. So that was it, you know, all that stuff. And it was a cool period for that music still, because it was on the end of the history of blues, the original blues. And then there was it still felt like a contemporary kind of music at that point, you know, with the 80s guys.
Yeah, it was still like in the pop.
Yeah, the
realm,
fact that the
some
BBC
sort.
would stream that, that would broadcast it live, and
Nowadays, they wouldn't even consider it, I
it's
think.
not of interest broadly.
No.
Or it's been decided that it's not of interest by some powers that be. That
Yeah.
But so that was it, and almost all of them were playing a Strat. So I was.
So that was the moment you thought, I have to get me a Strat.
Pretty much, yeah. But I took another year, so I was at home practicing on my nylon string, trying to play along with all that stuff, and then I actually did my first couple of gigs before I had an electric guitar. So I borrowed my school. And we had a really cool music teacher. He was a classical guy, and he didn't really know anything about what we were doing, but he was very supportive of the fact that we wanted to play music. Mr. Frewer, he was super cool, and he would let us use the music rehearsal space at school, after school and on the weekends. And the school had a cheap Strat copy. So I did my first gig on the school's, that was because I didn't have an electric guitar yet. And then another year, 1991, we found a used Strat, and that was how it worked. It was very different, and I think I sometimes think about that with the kind of gear world that we live in these days, where everybody obsesses over gear. I was gigging on a borrowed guitar before I had my own electric. Because it was so what we wanted to do. You found a way, even without the gear. I didn't have any
The gear
gear.
wasn't like the gatekeeper. It was like, move out of the way, gear. We had to go.
Yeah, it's more
get to
important.
the stage.
Whatever it takes, we'll do a show,
Yeah.
So I just carried on from there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've
that's
done
nice.
gigs. In fact, until COVID was the longest time I'd not done a gig once, because it was near. What was it? Let me see. The last one, like in March or something, until May. So it was like 14 or 15 months of no gigs. I hadn't not done a gig in 15 months since my first gig, and then we always did something from then on at the age of 13, and
Talking about the big reset.
yeah. So that was crazy. Literally, nearly 30 years of gigging more consistently than I'd never not done a show.
And how was the first time you went on stage again after that period? Was it like you were never gone?
It was great. Yeah, it was great. I tell you, I ran the gauntlet at the end of 2020, when the world was still mostly shut down, and I jumped on a flight from here to Los Angeles and went to Josh Smith's studio. Josh, great guitar player. And we did a live stream with me and Kurt Fletcher. Josh put this thing together to where we do like 3 nights from New Year's Eve 2020 to 21 just to play. So we got, everybody did a test, and everybody then kind of, we kept our little self together. And so, and we did 3 nights. We each of us like leading the night, and then all jamming together in Josh's studio. It was fun. It was really cool of Josh to put that together. But that was kind of weird, man. For a minute there, and we all felt like really weak hands, even though because you can play every day, but it's not the same as like the intensity of doing a couple of hours of actually playing. It doesn't matter how much you play on the couch; it's just not the same as
physically
having to
and
deliver.
mentally.
Yeah, the adrenaline and stuff. So, so we were all like, oh my God, But actually, the hardest thing was singing, because I'm like, I really feel rusty on that. Because, of course, I'm not really inclined to sing at home the same as I'm inclined to play guitar. I guess I'm a guitarist who sings as well. Do you know what I mean? So that's my voice, the guitar.
Yeah, that's the primary.
Yeah, and things like I got some lighter strings for the first time in ever, because I was sitting around at home. But the minute I got into battle again. I'm like, no, these are too light for me. I'm just used to what I'm used to. But
yeah, that's a great thing you mentioned, because I've got a couple of questions from the Gitaarmannen community, and someone mentioned string tension, or string thickness.
Yeah,
Carlo. He said Matt is a big fan of Stevie Ray Vaughan. Does he use thick strings, .13, like Stevie did?
I use 11s.
11s.
11 to 52 mostly at the moment. Always have. And it probably came from, that was the wisdom when I was starting out, you know. That was the common wisdom. Get a Strat, string it up heavy. But I'm just used to it at this point. And I'm in standard tuning, not tuned down. So, and I like to say, it's not, I mean, not getting any younger. And they hurt sometimes a bit these days, you know. It's just starting to get like a little lump in there, a tiny little, you know, the fluid. And so I have to watch it, you know. But if I put a set of 10s on, it's like spaghetti to me. It's just what... And I feel like for my style and for blues in general, I need to be able to like, dig in and get something back, especially with a Strat. And I was just super finicky about a Strat setup. Whereas I just did back there, I don't know whether you guys can see, I just got a Collings I-35 recently, you know, like a really nice version of a 335, and I'm less particular about that. And if I sit in with a friend, if it's like a Les Paul or something with a set of 10s, I can kind of get around in it, but but my Strats, I just need them to be like exactly set up how I like. So 11.
How do you like to have the? Do you use the tremolo a lot?
No, that's all bolted down. You know, 5 springs. I did think again during COVID, while I'm just sat here doing nothing for the first time ever. I thought maybe I could. I set one up with the floating like Jeff Beck style. Thought maybe I'll be Jeff Beck by the time I come out of here, but it didn't happen. And but it's down and a fairly high action as well. Just I don't set my guitars up to be. I set them up for the sound and the feel that I like, to get the most out of them rather than to be easy to play. Big frets, I have to have big frets. So 6100s on a Fender or 6105s on a Gibson scale length. But I need the tall frets to get hold of the heavier string. And so, it gives you a bit to work with, but that's just what works best for me. And it probably did start with this Stevie thing as a kid, the common wisdom at the time in the early 90s, right? Everybody was like that, but it's just what I'm used to now. And sometimes I'd be happier if I could get used to lighter strings as I get older, but it's too late.
And what brand of strings do you use?
Kurt Mangan strings. I've been using those for probably, I think, must be like 16 years now. He's from Colorado, fantastic guy. Kurt, been a wonderful supporter of me. So I have a couple of different signature sets with Kurt. One is regular nickel wrapped, and then I really got into, he does these pure nickel on a round core string, which is like the early 60s string, like really vintage style. And man, I love those. So we did a second signature set, slightly different gauge, like on a couple of the strings, still an 11 set, but and I just really got into playing these pure nickel ones. They're a bit warmer to start with, but they stay more even through their life, I find. In my theory, if you really want to get into the nerdery of this stuff,
this is the Gitaarmannen podcast. So if you want a nerd, let's nerd.
The round core with the wrap, instead of most strings have a hex core these days, you know, because it's easier for the wrap to grip on to the hex core. But the round core actually has like less gaps in it on a kind of microscopic level with the wrap around it. So I don't think as much crap gets into the wrap on the round core. It's like there's less space to fill up with sweat and bits of finger skin. So that's my theory. I think that they stay more responsive over the life of the string. So I used to change strings every single gig because I mean, it's just I want that fresh response out of the string, you know, the maximum response. Yeah. But these, I can get 2 gigs of the set of pure nickel because they don't sound dreadful after one set, you know. But if you're really playing a guitar, like wringing its neck, you'll kill a set of strings pretty quickly, you know. So.
Yeah, and if you sweat a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
Aggressive sweat. Guilty of aggressive sweat. So it's...
Here in Florida, you know, it's warm, man.
Yeah. Do you have your favorite Strat like lying around?
I do.
You can show, yeah.
These 2 here, hang on.
Yeah.
This is the OG, which is I've had 25 years this year. So
wow.
61, and you know, this was my only guitar for my first few records. You know, again with the gear stuff. When people talk about gear, it was like, well, when I made my first couple of records, I had 1 guitar and 1 amp and 1 pedal. And I was making the goal was to make music. Do you know what I mean? Not a mass gear. And then, of course, you do get more gear as the years go on. But this is always...
Is this in the same state as you bought it, or did you...
No, all that wear is me.
Serious?
Yeah. I mean, 25 years, you know? And it's not toured for that much for the last 10 or 15. I didn't, you know, I got worried about losing it, and it did get lost by the airlines a couple of times. I got it back, obviously, but you know, this was the benchmark, and then this one I got. This one, well, I started using it almost a couple of years ago, and then managed to actually make it mine, and it's a '63. It's a refinish. It was in a kind of not very nice red when it initially came to me, and my buddy Marty Orlak here up in Port St. Lucie, Florida, up the road from me, gave it the finish it deserved for me. So this has been doing most of the work for the last year, and it's a great guitar. But as you can see, talking of sweating, like we didn't relic it. He checked it a little bit just to give it the patina.
Yeah.
But that's just doing all my gigs. Basically every single gig for the last year, and all the summer festivals, and you know, sweating on it. It's, you know, nitro. Yeah. If you actually gig an old guitar, it wears pretty quick. So that's not relic. That's just playing it. You know,
playing it.
Yeah. So those are the Strats these days, man. I just like the old ones, and they're stock. You know, other than big frets. No.
Yeah, and necks. What necks do you like?
You know what? Like the '63 is really big for a Strat, for an old Strat, and the '61 is a bit slimmer. I don't really, as long as they're not too slim. Do you know what I mean? Something to hold on to, and I'm a thumb over player, you know, so that's not a thumb on the back. Yeah, that '63 is a bit like if anybody's. In fact, I think the guitar's roughly the same era as like Stevie's number 1. That's a January '63. And if you've played a Stevie signature Strat, some people may have tried those. The Stevie Ray Vaughan signature model from Fender. It's got that fairly full feeling neck. That's very similar, but it's not a requirement for me. It's more like as long as they're not too slim, you know. And
do you like a sanded neck, or?
Yeah, I mean, those are just worn through. Again, I mean, like, hang on. Like that is like all gone. That's just wood on there from 25 years, and you can see that's. I mean, I had a couple of things on it when I got it. Do you know what I mean? But this is all me. This can get journey on to see the lacquer is going. So in another year or two, that'll be like that.
That'll be gone.
So yeah, I prefer like the feel, but it's just wood, you know, just sweat through the lacquer, and that's what I like. And the radius is traditional, so I think that's something that people maybe aren't used to. But it's 7.25. I keep the vintage radius even when we refret them. So you have to have the action up a bit to make that work, you know?
Yeah. So low action for you just doesn't cut it, or are you?
Yeah, I can't grip the strings. It's all about being able to get hold of the string, you know? And it just sounds better. So most of my choices in terms of guitar setup, there'd be a lot easier way to play things, but it doesn't yield the same results in tone. So I prioritize tone over ease, I guess.
Yeah. I understand the choice. Let's see, another question from the community. Frits van Dijk, talking about Dutch names.
Yeah.
He says, does he still use the Two-Rock signature amplifiers? And how does he think about the modern day amp modelers?
Okay. My signature
questions.
amp with Two-Rock. Yeah, there's one over there on the, as you can see, surrounded by Two-Rocks. Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
But the current Two-Rocks are, you know, they keep evolving, and the current lineup is the best ever. My friend of 15 years, actually, Eli Lester, he was a good friend, and we used to sit in with my band in California. Ended up buying Two-Rock, you know, and kind of saving it from the previous situation. And he's a great player, and he's got great ears, and just very talented individual across the board for a variety of reasons. So once he took over the company, he just took it to another level, and it became better than ever. So I actually just used my signature model in the UK for when we were at Ronnie Scott's last October, and so I keep one there, and I've got one over there in a combo cabinet now. So nothing wrong with it at all. It's a great amp, you know, but obviously Eli's taken things to another level again now. So I use the classic reverb as my main choice of amp. But I also the vintage deluxe one, the more recent one, I use a lot locally. Like if I go and play here, like I'll do, if I'm home, there's like a Chicago blues thing we do on a Thursday night, just straight blues, just in a local bar, really, just for fun. Cool. I like to actually play with the band if at least once a week if I'm not on the road, you know. So we just do it for fun. A bunch of local blues guys, harmonica, and I'll take the vintage deluxe and just the 1x12 cabinet for that. So it's like 35 watts and kind of like Fender Deluxe or Vibrolux type output, and I love that. But the classic reverb is the king of amps for me, undisputed world champion.
Yeah, it's on number one on my wish list.
Yeah,
I have to sell, I think, both of my kidneys to get one. But
and this one behind me is the Sterling, you know, so that's kind of like Stevie's type thing, and that's an amazing experience. It took me a long time to dial that one in, figure it out. I actually ended up renting a rehearsal room nearby and just taking them all and spend, you know, because quite often at sound check or on the road, you just don't get the time to do that, and you can't do it in I would get asked to leave my neighborhood if I did it at home. So
you need to go to a bunker somewhere.
I really got it dialed in, and I've done, and then it's amazing that thing. But you have to. My mistake was thinking of them like Fenders, because I grew up playing super reverbs. For my first few records were just super reverbs, and my early touring was super reverbs. And these are different. You have to think of them in terms of preamp and power amp as being separate, and the power amp is clean. So it's you're amplifying a preamp in a different way than like an old Fender where you turn it up and it just starts falling apart. But I don't even look for amps, or I'm fine. You know, it's like I know what I like and I have it now. So amp modelers are great. I have an Axe FX right there. You know, now you won't see me on stage with one. That is not for me. No. But in terms of like if I have to do something quick like this, if I was needing to play, to me that sounds better than trying to squeeze a Two-Rock into the digital domain. And I've got the aux box, and I've tried that, and in some ways it's cool, you know. And my True Fire courses, we use the aux, so that's, you can hear me through a 2-rock into the aux there. But just in terms of consistency, convenience, and like lack of headaches, you're kidding yourself, really, to think that it's any different than the aux. You're going one step further back of going to digital. Do you know what I mean? Like, okay, guitar, I use my regular pedal board and all of that stuff into the 2-rock and then into the aux, or use my regular pedal board into the Axe effects, and you're one step turning to digital sooner. So I don't have any like sort of problem with it from gear's gear, you know. And if it sounds good, I will say the Axe effects, I think it's amazing. It's massively overkill for me. I have one patch that sounds as much like I can get, sounds as much like my 2-rocks and a Fender put together as I could do. Yeah. So I've got like however many 999 patches that I've never used, you know, so it is overkill. But in some ways, in certain circumstances, that stuff actually sounds better to me. And I can just flick a switch and I'm ready to record, go to the internet. So it's not something, it sounds, though, this is the important thing to remember with the digital stuff, it sounds like the amp is mic'd up in a live room, and then I listen back to it through the monitors in the same way as I would do in the studio if I was overdubbing guitar. I would stand in the control room with the amp mic'd up out there. That's what it sounds like. And as soon as you realize that that's what these things are offering, they sound like a recording of an amp. But they don't sound like an amp in front of you. That's something that I don't think anyone's achieved. A good friend of mine, Andy Abel, one of the best guitar players I know. People won't know him, but if you're ever in the Fairfield, Connecticut area, you should look out for Andy playing. But he's from the band that Christine, my girlfriend, was in for many years. So he is he's doing like a variety of music and tones on a gig. So he uses the Helix, is that the Line 6, the nice one? He uses that, but into one of those old VHT power amps, the with the like 150 watt like stereo tube power amp, the big giant thing, and then a pair of like Bogner cube cabs or Boogie 112s. And it sounds great. If I sit in on that, if you blindfolded me, I wouldn't really know it was an amp, because he's taking that sound of like a recorded amp in Line 6 and then putting it into a tube power amp, and it gives it the life, you know? Yeah. So, I'm not precious about this stuff at all, but in terms of doing a gig, you'll never see me not with a 2-rock or an old Fender or something, you know? And
oh man!
Even when I fly in to gigs and have to use backline, I use the Kingsley Maiden preamp, which is a Canadian company that pedal show viewers may have seen them. It's a tube preamp, and I run that into like the effects return only of a pair of like DeVilles is what I asked for, maybe with a stereo reverb just to make it a bit sexier, and that tube preamp sounds better than the entirety of the front end of the DeVilles, Fender DeVilles. So like you could take a modeler, you know, look, I've got like right here, I was just checking that thing out, you know, I grabbed one, that's the UA Enigmatic. Oh yeah, it's like the Dumble style thing. Yeah. So I check things out just for my own amusement, and it's cool, and I could take that on tour, but again, it's like, it's not real. And that's fine. I mean, everything's going to turn into, you know, digital at some point. Even when my album comes out, it's on a CD, or, you know, like vinyl is real. That's why it's good. It's actually in 3-dimensional space. If you zoom in on the vinyl, it's actually there. It exists, you know. Yeah. But we live in a world, so I mean, that's great. It's great fun, you know. And I was like, oh, maybe I could use that and not need an entire Axe effects to use one patch to do stuff virtually like this.
Have you checked out the Neural DSP, the Nano Cortex, and the Kemper and all those?
No, I haven't checked them out. I probably tried some plug. Well, actually, I got the Two-Rock plug-in, of course, which just came out, and it sounds amazing. And I can set the knobs like I would on the amp, and it's pretty much the same. My only problem with plugins, and this is why I've ended up for stuff I need to do quickly, the XFX is its own processor. The problem with plugins is latency. And
latency. It's a bitch.
I can never get around that feel, and the feel of the pick on the string and the response is so important to me as a player.
Yeah.
That an external box such as the Fractal doesn't suffer from that. It's like it's doing its own processing just the same as an amp to me, and then it goes into the computer. So that's more feel-wise more successful for me. But the actual sound of the Two-Rock plugin, and this computer, is as by computer standards, this is old. It was a good iMac, but it's like 8 years old now. It's not quite as quick. If they can get the latency down to imperceptible, then I'd probably just use the Two-Rock plugin, because that sounds the best.
It would be possible, because like all the Kempers and they are little computers.
They are, exactly.
They have no latency that you can feel.
Yeah, the Fractal's an entire computer processor there. But so I probably need a new computer that's got that kind of level of processing while it's running the recording software, and I just don't have that. And again, it's like I'd probably invest in something more interesting to me in the meantime than that, you know. So, but I'm sure in another 5 years, where processing power makes latency imperceptible with that. Because I will say, I think the Two-Rock plugin sounds the best out of everything. I think it sounds better than the XFX for my sound, because it's my sound. Do you know what I mean? So but it won't do all the other sounds that the XFX does. But
I understand what you say, because when you play into a plugin, you have the latency, and people will say, "Why don't you just reamp it?"
Yes,
but you need to feel to have the response of the amp to play what you play.
Makes you play differently.
So that's why I never use it.
Makes you play differently. Yeah, we did some reamping on the new record, but for a different reason. So we reamped the close microphones of my amp back into the live room where we recorded, so that the guitar could be still have separation, and it wouldn't be bleeding on the drums. But then I wanted to use the room sound of the amazing room that we were in, which was a Peter Gabriel studio in Wiltshire, the Real World studio. Yeah, we did. We went there and just 2 days just played, but we had separated the organ, the Leslie, and the amp, so that we weren't bleeding. I mean, a lot of my records are just all live in a room and bleeding all over each other. You couldn't separate them, and there's still one track on this record that it's not. It's all just in the room. But then actually had them play back my amps through the system and re-record it. So I mean, but that's the trick as old as time. All those records from the 50s and 60s, any reverb you hear is actually like a speaker in a chamber that's mic'd
in a room.
So we just did that, our own version of that, and then you have control over the amount of room sound. There's a lot of different. It's at the end of the day, it's like what are you trying to get, and do you like the sound of it?
True. Let's talk about gear and pedals before we wrap it up. I have a new thing here on the podcast that's called the Desert Island Pedalboard. And the fun thing is, Pedal Train, they have the Pedal Train Nano.
Yes.
And the viewers and listeners of this podcast can win a Pedal Train Nano.
Nice.
And they have to do one thing. They have to tell me which 3 pedals they want to take with them on the Desert Island Pedalboard. And you can let me know in the comments if you're listening. Also, if you're listening and watching on Spotify at the moment, you can just react on Spotify too. It's a new function. And you can send me an email. info@gitaarmannen.nl. Voordat we verder gaan wil ik even de winnaar bekendmaken van de allereerste giveaway van de Pedal Train Nano. Naar aanleiding van de uitzending met Tom Lodewijks kreeg ik echt een tsunami aan mailtjes binnen. Ik heb er eentje uitgekozen. Compleet random. Het is geworden Timo Mommers. Jazeker, hij speelt onder andere bij de Gig Coverband en Jig Monroe en de Amazing Laser Beams. En hij zegt, mocht ik dit plankje winnen, dan ga ik die aan mijn neefje geven. Hij speelt nu een aantal jaar een beetje gitaar en heeft voor zijn 10e verjaardag een elektrische gekregen / gekocht. Tijd om hem te introduceren in de wereld van de pedaaltjes. Nou, dat vind ik een hele mooie. Timo, als je hem hebt, maak even een foto of een filmpje van het moment dat je die Pedal Train Nano aan je neefje geeft. Dan kunnen we dat misschien weer in de volgende podcast even laten zien. Full circle. Oké, snel terug naar de aflevering met Matt Schofield. So, I want to know from you, of course, Matt, what are your 3 desert island pedals?
Well, that's really easy because I only use a Pedal Train Nano anyway to tour with. So that's how small my pedalboard is.
Wow.
So I don't have to
it had to be.
I don't have to narrow it down at all. So it's my Supreme. This is another one, but it's not on my board. But that we did with Mad Professor a few years ago, the Finnish guys. And I'm very, very happy with this pedal, you know. So it's 2 sides I can switch back and forth between the 2 sides without stacking. I don't like stacking very often because I get too much compression I don't want like that too much pedal sound. So I can go from one side to a bit more on the other side. I have that, and I have the Mad Professor Deep Blue Delay, which I literally on my board is the same one that I bought in 2007. It's like literally the exact same one I've been touring with for 18 years, if that's not a testament to that pedal. It's the original hand-wired version, which I like the sound of better than the and I think they're going to maybe bring that back, actually, because some new young chaps just took over Mad Professor. So there's those 2 Mad Professors, and that's really, people don't really think of, like, you don't hear a lot of delay on my playing, but I have it always on. So that's
a little slapback, or
it's a bit longer than a slapback, actually. Yeah, it's maybe, I don't know the exact amount. It's probably about 200 milliseconds. I think of it like the back wall. It's like a tiny amount of almost room sound. Imagine the reflection off the back wall of a venue. So it's like if I hit the strings and muted, it's like, so it's like longer than a traditional slapback, which is a doubler, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. But it just puts a little halo around the whole sound. You don't hear it, but if I turn it off, you would know the difference. You
would notice it.
Yeah, and it's like almost like a comfort thing at this point. It puts me in the same sense of space every time, you know, everywhere I go. So I have, but it's literally the same one pedal for since 2007, 18 years. And then I have been using for a couple of years the Jam Pedals Harmonious Monk tremolo.
Tremolo, yeah.
Yeah, so I've ended up using the harmonic one quite a bit. So it sounds, you think of it like a Univibe, but more subtle, if you know what I mean. Because a Univibe does take over your sound to where it's just, you know, turn it on and it's just Jimmy Robin Trout. Just that's what it is, right? That's just what it does. Yeah. So this is like people say, what's the Univibe you're using? Well, it's actually harmonic tremolo, and that's got the 2 speeds. So quite often on a couple of my songs, I have it on very slow and only on like 50 or slightly less than 50% mix. And it gives just some movement that's really nice. That's it. And I have a tuner, turbo tuner that I've had for years, the little one.
Yeah.
There you go. And I have been putting that in front of the pedal board. So that's, if you don't include the tuner, then that's the Vemiram Booty G. And it's a really great sounding boost that doesn't compress if you use it to stack. Almost like a preamp where it just adds something big to the tune. So
when would you use it? Is it always on, or is it
No. What happens is it's in front of everything else. It's in front of the Supreme. And then maybe there's a new song from the new record where I turn the Supreme off. Supreme's normally always on because I'm a volume control player. So I'm not switching pedals very much. I play like I'm playing straight into the amp, but I've used the pedals to gain stage to the amp, if you know what I mean. It sounds different than if you just turn the amp up more. And then my guitar volume is what I'm constantly manipulating. So I might, at the beginning of solo, I might be on 8 or 7, and then only right towards maybe the end am I wide open. So very small amount of the night I'm on 10. All the different tones and the colors and the dynamics are in the guitar volume control. I'm super picky about volume controls, value and sweep, and that would be another podcast. Like that's the gear that I nerd out on now. Is not like new amps or pedals or guitars. I'm like, what's the best volume pot that I can get?
Okay, what is the best volume pot?
Well, it's different for each guitar. That's why it's like such a, you just got to try. And both these guitars, the vintage Strats here, the two, I had to replace the volume pots. The original seize up and completely lock, and you can probably repair them, but I don't trust them. Well, then the new pots are not the same as the old pots. So I ended up in the 63, the best one was a Mojo Tone vintage taper, but like lower, like 245K. So this is the nerdery here.
Okay,
Because a lot of the new pots are like higher spec. They try and sell you on, like get a 270K pot or something, like over spec. It'll be better, or make your guitar more open. And it made that guitar sound harsh, and it didn't want that. The low output pickups, and so that was the one that worked with those pickups. Like it's in the kind of, it makes the impedance right, and the sweep is right. So I can play that, no treble bleeds. I hate those things. I can play that guitar on like 4 or 5, and it's not dull because the pot works with the impedance of the pickups, and it cleans up, and the sweep is totally smooth all the way through. It's the vintage taper is almost more like a linear pot, rather than the audio taper that drops off quickly. So that one ended up with that one. My 61 Strat is a darker guitar. It's a slab board, and the pickups are darker. And that one ended up with an RS Guitarworks Super Pot, which is higher spec, it's about 270, and that made that guitar work right. So it's not like an exact science. You just have to go, this isn't feeling right. But if you use the volume pot as much as I do, which is like probably between almost every line that I play, I change it a bit. I'm like, play a line, a little bit more of that, but it's constantly manipulating it. It becomes super important, the response. And the guys, the old Les Paul guys, the 50s Les Paul guys, they're constantly blending the pickups, and that's where all the sounds are. So it's really important. What were we saying though? But so that I use on a Supreme's usually on, but there's a song from the new record where I turn that off and use this for more of it's like my version of the Stevie Ray Tin Pan Alley sound, the neck and middle pickup on a Strat, and this does it crispier than the Supreme. I want that like sparklier. And then maybe by 2/3 of the way through the gig, I might stand on this into the Supreme just to like do a really big kind of sound. I'm not doing that from the start of the gig. That's more towards the end of the gig. Is like, let's turn something else on now. So it's all
turn it up to 11.
Like building layers of gain staging towards the amp, but also as the flow of the concert. I don't come out of the gate like with everything switched on. I try and lead you there over the course of the show.
That's nice.
Yeah, man.
That's nice. And you're going to play in the Netherlands. I'm going to say it again. 20th of March, P60 Amstelveen. 21st of March, Tivoli Utrecht. The 22nd, the Souther Blues Night in Heerlen. And 24th of March in the Spot in Groningen. I would like to thank you.
Thank you
for your time.
Yeah. Oh, my pleasure, man. My pleasure.
It's been a great hour and 12 minutes.
Yeah, sorry. Hey, if I get talking, I'm talking, man.
Yeah, me too. This is just what makes Gitaarmannen, the podcast, what it is.
Right, man.
Just talking about guitars and stuff and impedances and everything in between.
Yeah, right. I appreciate the chance to come on, man.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate the support. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Look forward to seeing everybody there as well.
Hey, dankjewel voor het kijken. Vergeet je niet te abonneren, want wist je dat meer dan 70% van de mensen die kijken niet geabonneerd is? Dus geef een like, laat een comment achter en abonneer je op mijn kanaal. Dat helpt mij om nog meer toffere gasten over de streep te trekken om te gast te zijn. Dankjewel en tot de volgende.